The room went completely silent. My parents' eyes bounced between me and my brother like they were watching a tennis match that would decide everything about our family. Nathan smirked like he controlled the whole world, like he'd already won before we even started this confrontation. My heart hammered in my chest so hard I thought everyone could hear it thumping through my ribs like a drum beating wildly. My hands were shaking visibly, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady and calm, even though I was falling apart on the inside and terrified of what might happen. "You need to hear something," I said quietly, reaching into my bag and pulling out the first piece of evidence carefully. The evidence Nathan thought I'd never find in a million years. The evidence that would change everything forever and tear our family apart at the seams. My brother's smirk faltered for just 1 second, and I knew I had him exactly where I wanted him to be. Finally, after months of plotting and planning and gathering information in secret, everything was falling into place exactly as I'd imagined it would happen. This was my moment. This was the time I'd been waiting for with anticipation. The time when the truth would finally come out into the light where everyone could see it clearly and understand what had really been going on. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears as I prepared to show them everything. My name is Clara Jensen. I'm 26 years old, and I've spent my entire life being the quiet one in my family who nobody really paid much attention to. The overlooked one. The one nobody remembered at family gatherings because everyone was too busy watching my brother charm his way through the room like he owned the place and everyone in it. Nathan was always the golden child, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes no matter what he did or how he behaved. Meanwhile, I worked behind the scenes every single day. Studied hard in school and after graduation, became a financial analyst at a respected firm downtown that paid well and valued my work. I was building something real and meaningful with my career and my savings. But that morning, sitting at our kitchen table before work in early February, I knew that everything I'd built and everything I loved was about to be attacked and destroyed by my own brother. My parents' trust in me was slipping away like sand through my fingers, grain by grain, day by day. Nathan had been spreading lies about me for weeks, twisting my words and my actions deliberately, and they were starting to believe him over me without question. But I wasn't going to crumble or fall apart like he wanted me to. Not this time. Not ever. I was going to take back control of my own story before it was too late, and I lost everything I'd worked for my entire adult life. I spent that morning making a decision that would change everything. Started small. Too small for anyone else to notice at first glance when it was happening. Weeks before that final confrontation in the dining room, I began detecting the subtle changes in how my family treated me and spoke about me behind my back. Nathan would mention things I supposedly said that I never actually said to him at all, and nobody questioned him. Family conversations I supposedly had would be twisted around and repeated back to me completely wrong, making me sound foolish and irresponsible. He'd show my parents private messages between us on his phone, but they'd be taken out of context deliberately, making me look completely irresponsible and careless and unreliable. He'd even take inside family jokes that we'd all laughed about together and twist them into weapons against me, using them to make me look stupid or foolish in front of everyone at family gatherings. It was all so small, so easy to explain away in the moment when it happened. But it was happening constantly, over and over again. It was very intentional and calculated. He was building a fortress of lies brick by brick, layer upon layer, wall by wall, and I was starting to understand that he was doing it on purpose to destroy my reputation completely and make me look bad. I realized I had to do something before it was too late. Then I found the first real proof that made everything real and changed my perspective. I was looking through old emails from work, trying to find a document I'd lost several weeks earlier, when I stumbled across a conversation Nathan had forwarded to our parents without telling me or asking permission. My breath caught in my throat immediately and I felt my stomach drop. In the messages, he was telling Mom and Dad that I was reckless and irresponsible with money and with my relationships with other people. He described me as someone who made poor decisions constantly and couldn't be trusted with important things or responsibilities at work or in life. He painted me as a failure in the financial world and said I was struggling with my job. None of it was true, but the way he'd written it sounded so convincing, so believable, so reasonable that I understood why they might have started to doubt me. I held my phone in my hands and felt something shift deep inside me. It wasn't anger exactly, but something colder and sharper. Something more focused and dangerous that burned in my chest. This was the first domino in my plan. This was where everything would begin. I carefully took screenshots of everything and saved them to a hidden folder on my computer that only I knew about and could access. At family dinner 3 days later on a Thursday night, I didn't react to his smirks or his snide comments about my job and my salary and my career choices. Instead, I asked him a casual question that seemed innocent about some family finances we'd discussed years ago when I was still in college. I brought up a past incident involving money that he'd twisted and changed in his favor to make himself look better and more successful. My parents looked confused and struggled to remember exactly what I was talking about from so long ago. Their faces showed puzzlement and uncertainty that made my heart race with excitement. That's when I knew the first cracks in his story had started to appear and spread like hairline fractures through glass. I didn't push any further that night because that would have been too obvious and would have tipped him off. I just smiled, ate my dinner slowly, and waited patiently for the moment. Nathan looked uncomfortable for just a moment, squirming in his seat, but then his confidence came back strong. He didn't realize yet that I was already 3 steps ahead of him in this game. The game had begun that night, and I was finally ready to play it better than he ever could in his entire life. I discovered something important during the second week of my plan that changed everything. My Aunt Marianne had been quietly skeptical of Nathan's stories all along and hadn't said anything to anyone about her doubts and concerns. She'd mentioned it to me once, almost by accident during a phone call where she was venting about family drama, but I'd stored the information away carefully in my mind like a valuable treasure that I could use later. Aunt Marianne was the family's unofficial detective and observer of people's behavior and lies. She noticed things that other people missed completely and didn't pay attention to. She remembered details that everyone else forgot about, conversations and events from years past. She didn't just believe whatever people told her without thinking about it carefully and critically. I decided to confide in her carefully during a private lunch, measuring out exactly how much information I should share with her at this point in my plan. I told her about the twisted messages he'd been sending, the lies he'd been spreading around, but I did it in a way that didn't sound like I was just complaining about my brother being annoying. I presented it like I was genuinely concerned about his behavior and worried about him and his mental state and what he was going through. She listened carefully to every word I said, and I could see her putting the pieces together in her mind like a puzzle coming together slowly. She became my hidden ally, someone Nathan didn't even know was paying attention to him and his actions closely and carefully. She agreed to help me, but quietly and secretly, without letting anyone else know about our arrangement or our partnership. 2 weeks later, at a family brunch on a Saturday morning in late February, I orchestrated something carefully planned and executed with precision and perfect timing. I knew Nathan would try to impress some cousins who were visiting from out of town, so I made sure to be in the kitchen when they asked him about a major project he'd claimed to have led at his job. I listened from the other room as he told an elaborate story about how successful it was, about how much credit he personally deserved for making it happen and bringing it to completion. Then, casually and without any accusation in my voice, I asked him a simple question from the doorway that sounded completely innocent. "Wait, wasn't that project actually led by your coworker Tom from the finance department?" The room went quiet immediately and everyone stopped eating their food. Nathan's face changed color slightly and his jaw clenched tight with tension. He tried to laugh it off like it was no big deal, but everyone had heard me clearly and distinctly. For the first time, his smirk actually faltered and disappeared for a moment, and I could see real fear flash across his face. I smiled inwardly at my success and felt a rush of satisfaction knowing I was right. Patience was winning this game against him. I was playing the long game with him, and it was working better than I'd imagined it would in my best dreams. Over the next several weeks through March and into April, I documented absolutely everything with the precision of my financial analyst job and training. Every lie he told to anyone, every manipulation tactic he used on our family, every twisted story he told to make himself look better and more successful. I created a meticulous timeline on my computer, organized by date and incident, with detailed notes about what happened and who witnessed it. I wasn't acting on emotion or anger at all. I was being methodical and organized like the financial analyst I was trained to be in my professional life. I gathered screenshots of messages, saved emails, and written notes about important conversations. I recorded dates and times and locations of each incident carefully. I even got written statements from relatives who had seen Nathan lie or manipulate situations directly. This wasn't revenge or cruelty. This was a carefully constructed case against someone who had tried to destroy my reputation. The folder on my computer grew thicker every week, filled with undeniable proof of his patterns and lies and manipulation. I knew that when the moment came, I would have everything I needed to expose him completely. I started the Whisper campaign very strategically during casual conversations with relatives throughout March and early April at family events and gatherings where everyone was together. I would casually drop hints in private conversations during moments when nobody else was listening, never directly accusing Nathan of anything outright or obvious that would tip him off immediately. Instead, I would share careful truths designed to make them question his stories on their own without my having to push hard or make accusations. I'd mention small contradictions I'd noticed between what he'd said before and what was actually true and verifiable. I'd ask innocent questions that made people think twice about what he'd told them previously about his job. I never pushed too hard or complained too much about him or his behavior. I just planted seeds of doubt very carefully, like a farmer planting crops in spring. My Aunt Marianne helped with this plan tremendously, reinforcing what I'd said in her own conversations with other family members quietly and naturally. Soon, relatives were starting to question Nathan's stories on their own without me even having to explain anything detailed to them about what happened. They were reaching their own conclusions based on the seeds of doubt I'd planted weeks before. His birthday party came in early April, and it changed everything that night in ways I hadn't even predicted. Our whole family gathered at an Italian restaurant downtown to celebrate Nathan turning 30 years old and beginning a new decade. I wore a nice black dress and arrived right on time with a gift wrapped in silver paper that felt heavy in my hands. During the toasts, I stood up and complimented Nathan publicly on his charm and his ability to connect with people sincerely. But I included subtle facts he had hidden from our family, small truths that made people think about what I was really saying underneath the compliments. I talked about how impressive it was that he'd inspired so many people with his stories, and his incredible ability to remember details. The room shifted slightly at these words. Unease crept in like cold air under a door on a winter night. Nathan didn't notice it, but everyone else did. My parents exchanged confused glances with each other. My cousins suddenly looked interested and started paying attention. I was being so clever about it that only people who were already suspicious would understand what I meant by those words. A few weeks after the birthday party in mid-April, I made my move with the biggest evidence yet that I'd been saving carefully. I pulled out old receipts and letters that Nathan thought I'd never find or discover in my lifetime. These were important documents from years ago that proved he'd been lying about his financial situation and his accomplishments. He'd spent money he told everyone he didn't have. He'd claimed credit for things he didn't do. I didn't accuse him directly or call him out harshly. Instead, I simply left them on the dining table during a family dinner, placed where everyone would eventually find them and discover them on their own. I let the family discover them without any explanation from me. When my mom picked up the first receipt, her face went completely pale. I watched her hands shake slightly. The panic flickered across Nathan's face like lightning across a dark sky. He realized in that moment that I had real proof. Real, undeniable proof that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. He didn't know how much I had or what I was planning to do with it next in my strategy. I maintained my composed exterior for the next 2 weeks while Nathan grew increasingly paranoid and anxious about what I knew and what I would do with that information eventually. He watched me carefully at family dinners, studying my face for clues and reactions to see what I was thinking and planning. He texted me asking pointed questions about what I was planning to do next and whether I'd talk to our parents. He tried to seem friendly and normal when we were together, But I could see the fear underneath the performance like a crack in a mask. Every mistake he made became an opportunity for me to gather more information and evidence, but I never pushed too fast or too hard or too obvious. I didn't want to seem like I was attacking him unfairly or without reason. I wanted him to keep unraveling on his own, to keep getting more nervous and making bigger mistakes. My Aunt Marian told me she'd seen him trying to talk to other relatives in corners, trying to get ahead of whatever he thought I was planning to do to protect himself preemptively. That was perfect for my timeline and my strategy. He was destroying his own credibility without me even having to say much of anything or make direct accusations against him. The more he tried to explain or defend himself, the worse it looked. During a small family gathering at my parents' house on a Saturday in late April, I asked pointed questions that sounded completely innocent to anyone listening. I asked them in front of everyone, each one subtly highlighting contradictions in the stories Nathan had told about his job and his success. "Hey Nathan, remember when you said you got promoted last month? Didn't Tom mention to me that they were actually restructuring the whole department?" He stumbled over his answer and couldn't think of a good response fast enough. Everyone in the room noticed his hesitation and confusion. His confidence was cracking visibly in front of us all. His hands got shaky when he tried to explain himself. My parents looked at each other with growing doubt in their eyes. This was the exact moment I'd been waiting for and planning for. The moment when the truth started forcing its way through all his lies. I stayed calm and kind, never accusatory or mean, just asking innocent questions about things I already knew the answers to clearly and completely. Then Aunt Marianne casually shared one of my truths in a conversation with my mom and my uncle during a family barbecue on a Sunday afternoon. She mentioned something Nathan had told her about a job opportunity that never actually materialized or happened. She said it so naturally, so casually, like she was just making conversation about nothing important. Nathan tried to deny it immediately, defending himself desperately and frantically. But this time his denial sounded weak and desperate and unconvincing to everyone listening. The room began to sense a major shift happening right before everyone's eyes. My mom was starting to look at Nathan differently now, with suspicion and doubt. My dad had stopped defending him automatically whenever he spoke in his defense. The foundation he'd built his lies on was starting to crumble underneath him like sand. I hadn't even revealed my biggest evidence yet that I was saving. This was just the beginning of the real truth coming out. Around this same time in May, I discovered he'd been hiding a much bigger secret from everyone. A significant financial misstep that could potentially ruin his professional reputation if it got out to his workplace and colleagues. He'd made a bad investment years ago that went very badly and lost him thousands of dollars that he couldn't recover. He'd hidden it from our family because he was too embarrassed and ashamed to admit it to anyone who might judge him. I didn't gloat about this discovery or act superior or mean about it. I didn't immediately tell everyone about what I'd found in his financial records. I simply stored the information away for the perfect timing when it would have the most impact on him. I knew this was my trump card, the thing that would make everything else make sense to people finally. When people understood what he'd been desperately trying to hide, they would understand why he'd been lying about so many other things constantly. He was desperate to look successful and perfect all the time, and that desperation had made him become a constant and habitual liar. I started praising Nathan in front of other relatives deliberately, knowing it would trigger his overconfidence and arrogance. He'd always been someone who needed constant validation and attention from people around him. When I complimented his intelligence or his work ethic in front of cousins, he couldn't resist the urge to show off and brag about his accomplishments. He'd make exaggerated claims about his accomplishments that weren't true at all. He'd tell bigger and bigger stories to make himself sound more impressive and successful than he actually was. And every time he did this, he'd add more contradictions to his web of lies. His credibility kept unraveling more and more with each boastful story he told. I was essentially giving him enough rope to hang himself with, and he couldn't resist taking it every time. His arrogance was his greatest weakness, and I was using it against him perfectly and strategically. Finally, in late May, I confronted him alone in the garage of my parents' house during a quiet evening when no one was home. No yelling or screaming. No tears or emotional outbursts. No anger showing on my face. Just facts and evidence. I told him calmly and clearly that I knew everything he'd done over the years. I knew about the lies he'd spread to our parents about me. I knew about the messages he'd twisted and taken out of context. I knew about the financial problems he'd hidden from everyone. I knew about all of it because I'd documented it all. His face went completely white like he'd seen a ghost. He panicked, realizing that I had documented everything carefully. I had proof that was undeniable and solid. He tried to explain himself, tried to justify his actions, tried to make excuses for why he did these things. But I didn't argue with him or fight back. I just listened and took mental notes about what he would say. Over the next few days in early June, family members began to approach me privately in quiet moments. They'd noticed the contradictions in Nathan's stories that didn't add up or make sense. They'd realized something wasn't right about what he was telling them. The first family members started questioning him openly at family dinners, asking him directly about things that didn't add up or make sense logically. It wasn't me directly exposing him anymore to everyone. It was the truth surfacing naturally through our relatives' own observations and realizations. They were coming to their own conclusions based on the seeds of doubt I'd planted weeks ago. My parents had serious conversations with each other in private about Nathan. I could hear them arguing in their bedroom one night, trying to figure out what was really going on. I could hear the disappointment in their voices. They felt betrayed that their own son had been lying to them. I celebrated tiny victories during this difficult period of watching my family fall apart and come to terms with betrayal from someone they loved and trusted. An awkward glance from my mom when Nathan told a story that didn't match what he'd said before in previous conversations. A corrected story when my uncle confronted him about a lie about his promotion that didn't happen the way he described it. A hesitant smile from someone who had believed Nathan before but was starting to doubt him and question his credibility. Every reaction fueled my strategy and made me more confident that I was doing the right thing by exposing him. I wasn't being cruel or unnecessarily mean to him. I was simply revealing the truth that was already there underneath everything. Every small moment of recognition from my family felt like validation that my plan was working. They were finally seeing what I'd been trying to tell them all along without directly saying it. They were finally understanding that Nathan wasn't the person they thought he was. I could see it in their faces during family gatherings as they watched him with new skeptical eyes. My younger brother even pulled me aside once and whispered that he'd always suspected something wasn't right about Nathan's stories but didn't know how to say it. The moment came during a family dinner in my parents' dining room on a Friday night in mid-June when everyone was finally ready to hear the truth. I finally revealed the first truly undeniable piece of proof in front of everyone at the table. I presented the financial records Nathan had hidden from the family. I showed the messages he'd doctored and taken out of context. I laid out the complete timeline of contradictions and lies that were impossible to deny or explain away. He tried to talk his way out of it, tried to explain everything and justify his actions, but everyone sat in shocked silence. The proof was right there on the table for everyone to see with their own eyes clearly. Our parents looked devastated by the truth. My younger brother looked confused about what was happening. My cousins looked scandalized and shocked. The truth was finally out completely, and there was no way Nathan could hide from it anymore. He attempted to manipulate the narrative one more time desperately, trying to convince everyone that I was the one who was wrong. But his arrogance blinded him to the careful setup I'd created over many months. Every lie he told now just added to his exposure and made things worse for him. People who might have given him the benefit of the doubt were now completely convinced he was a liar. My parents' disappointment turned into something harder and colder. They realized they'd been manipulated by their own son. That realization hurt them more than anything else. Nathan couldn't charm his way out of this one like he'd done before. His typical tactics weren't working anymore because I'd already destroyed his credibility completely. He finally lost his composure completely in front of the family that night. All the charm that he'd relied on his entire life suddenly disappeared. He started yelling and making accusations against me. He cried and tried to blame everyone but himself for his actions. His credibility crumbled piece by piece right in front of everyone's eyes. Meanwhile, I remained calm, composed, and collected throughout the entire thing. I didn't yell back or get emotional. I just sat there letting him destroy himself completely. My parents watched their son, this person they thought they knew, completely fall apart. They realized too late that I had been right all along. They realized they should have listened to me from the beginning instead of trusting him. I presented the ultimate proof that night. An audio recording I had made of one of our private conversations where Nathan was explaining his manipulations and lying to me directly. I played it for the family, along with a complete timeline of events I'd carefully organized over months. I also shared testimonies from relatives who had quietly supported me and noticed his lies all along. The room went completely silent. There was no defense anymore. No explanation that would work. No way to twist the truth to make it seem better. Nathan had to finally accept what he'd done and face the consequences of his actions. Our parents looked ashamed that they'd believed him over me. For the first time in years, I felt true relief wash over me like cool water on a hot day. I felt like I could breathe again after holding my breath for so long. The family's eyes shifted toward me with genuine respect, admiration, and disbelief at what I'd accomplished. They were seeing me differently now. They were seeing someone who had been patient and strategic and incredibly smart. Someone who hadn't just complained about the situation but had actually done something real about it. Nathan's arrogance had cost him everything important. His relationships in the family were damaged, possibly beyond repair. His reputation was destroyed. His career prospects were uncertain now. I didn't humiliate Nathan beyond what was absolutely necessary to reveal the truth to my family. I didn't expose him to people outside our family or at his workplace publicly. I let the truth speak for itself without adding anything extra or cruel on top of what was already there. The experience had taught me so much about patience, strategic thinking, and inner strength that I didn't even know I had before this all started and unfolded. I had turned the tables not with rage or emotion, but with intelligence and careful planning over many months. For the first time, I realized something important and true. The respect and trust that Nathan had stolen from me weren't just restored by proving the truth to everyone. They were actually mine forever now because I'd earned them through my own strength and intelligence without needing validation from anyone. I walked forward into my future knowing that I could handle anything that came my way. No one would ever be able to take me down again. I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building yourself up so strong that nobody can tear you down anymore.